When you look at the markets these days, it feels like those predictable cycles we used to count on. They're almost quaint now.
Yeah, ancient history maybe?
Right. Now it's just shockwaves. You get these geopolitical things, sudden regulatory changes, tech disruptions popping up constantly. Even just, rumors spreading online can cause chaos.
It's true. The ground really does feel like it's always shifting. And that's a huge, huge challenge for any organization, isn't it? How do you stay relevant? How do you keep people informed? And maybe most importantly, how do you hold on to trust when everything feels so unstable?
And what happens often, companies just freeze, or they fumble, they put out something way too late, or it just completely misses what people are actually worried about.
Exactly. That silence or that misstep, it can be really damaging.
Which brings us to our deep dive today. We're looking at a way through that chaos based on insights from Agile Content Strategy for Market Shocks. It's by Swiss economist Dr. Pooyan Ghamari, who founded the ALAN platform.
And the core idea here, it's really interesting. It's not just about, say, changing your product on the fly. It's fundamentally about communication, using your content, your messaging to, well, inform, reassure, educate, even mobilize your community when things get turbulent.
Right. Dr. Ghamari's work frames this content agility as the key thing, the mechanism for being resilient when disruption hits.
Yeah. It argues that if you can build that ability to communicate quickly, relevantly, and with authority during a shock, you can actually cut through all the noise. You can shape the narrative.
Turn vulnerability into leadership, essentially.
Precisely. So our goal here is to unpack that. Let's dig into why this agile approach to content is so vital during market shocks, and then, crucially, get practical. What are the actual steps, the systems you need to build before the next wave hits?
Okay, so let's start with the why. Why does agile content suddenly become so critical when the market goes haywire?
Well, the source talks about this crisis of trust and the battle for attention. When things are up in the air, people are just overloaded with noise, but they're desperate for clarity. They're basically asking, three things. What on earth just happened?
Okay, yeah, the facts.
The facts. Then what does this actually mean for me? The implications.
Right, the relevance.
And finally, maybe the biggest one. What should I do now? They need guidance.
And if you're not there with those answers, if you're silent or too slow or your message just feels off,
you lose instantly. That vacuum gets filled, maybe by rumors, maybe by competitors who are communicating. The article really hammers this home. Agile content is the antidote. It lets you manage the conversation.
it puts you back in the driver's seat, communication-wise.
And builds trust, right when people need a trusted source the most. Being that reliable voice when others are scrambling. That's powerful. Plus, the article notes, it's a competitive edge. Speed and communication can let you, run circles around bigger, maybe slower competitors.
There's that line you mentioned. Whoever communicates first and best leads.
Exactly. That stuck with me.
But okay, first and best. That brings up something the source tackles head on. This tension between speed and precision. It's not just about blurting something out fast.
No, absolutely not. That's key. Agility isn't recklessness. It's not about having every single detail perfectly nailed down in the first 5 minutes of a crisis. That's usually impossible anyway.
Right.
It's more about being present quickly, acknowledging the situation, sharing what you do know reliably, and then, crucially, committing to providing updates as you learn more. It's about evolving accuracy.
So showing up promptly, even if you have to say, we're still figuring out the details, but here's what we know for sure right now.
Precisely. That actually signals competence and a bit of humility, too. It builds more confidence than radio silence. Or worse, pretending you have all the answers when you clearly don't.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Be the reliable channel, even if the picture is still developing. So we've established the why this is so critical. Let's shift to the how. The source lays out what it calls a wizard action plan, practical steps.
Right, moving from theory into action. And the absolute foundation, step one, is create a crisis content protocol.
Okay, a protocol, like an emergency plan for comms.
Exactly. Think of it as your playbook. The why is straightforward. When a shock hits, you need to speak quickly, factually, and critically with one voice. Avoids internal chaos, mixed messages, delays.
So how do you build that? The how?
It means getting the right team together before anything happens. You need people from content, obviously, but also legal, technical, PR, maybe customer support. Clear roles are essential.
That's functional.
Definitely. And then you develop templates for common scenarios. You might face market crash messages, regulatory updates, service outage announcements, things you can adapt quickly.
Pre-written stuff, basically.
Yeah, adaptable templates. And very importantly, you need pre-agreed emergency approval chains. So you can bypass the usual sign-off loops and get approved messages out fast. Minutes, not days.
And you can't just write it and stick it on a shelf.
No way. Practice is key. Run simulations. Do postmortems after simulations, not just after real events. The article mentions Alan's Living Crisis Content Playbook. That word living is vital. It's constantly updated with lessons learned.
So it's better over time.
Exactly. Allowing them to respond within hours, tailored to the specific situation.
Okay, that protocol sounds foundational. What's step 2?
Step 2 is, during volatile times, launch a stud-of-the-market weekly update.
A regular update. Why weekly?
Consistency. When everything's turbulent, that regular, reliable update becomes an anchor for your audience. It provides stability.
Okay, I see. And how would that look, practically?
Could be anything, really. A short video, maybe a podcast segment like this, a concise email summary. The key is it's scheduled, it's reliable, you cover the latest news, you explain what it means for them specifically.
Adding context.
Crucial context. Maybe bring in guest experts sometimes for added credibility. But the absolute must-have, end with actionable insights. Don't just report the news, tell people what they might consider doing about it.
And the impact of doing that regularly.
Well, the source points to Alan's Market Pulse. It became this trusted go-to source for their community during uncertainty. That builds immense loyalty and positions you as a thought leader just by being that steady signal.
Makes sense. So, protocol first, then regular updates during turbulence. What's next?
Step 3. Collect and publish real-time insights from your community.
From your own users or customers.
Exactly. The article makes a fantastic point. Your users are on the front lines. Their experiences, their questions, how they're coping, the strategies they're trying. That's invaluable intelligence. It's gold.
So how do you actually get that gold?
You have to open up the channels. Maybe a dedicated Slack or Telegram group for quick feedback, actively monitoring comments, running quick polls, asking direct questions. Then, importantly, you curate and share back what you're hearing anonymized, of course.
Like customer stories or common challenges.
Yeah, or even just highlighting, here's what we're hearing from folks in the field. It shows you're listening, you're connected.
And sharing that back, what does that achieve?
2 things, mainly. 1, it makes your own content richer, more grounded, more practical because it reflects real-world experience. 2, it builds this incredible sense of community, of solidarity. People realize they're not alone in facing these challenges. It kind of crowdsources understanding.
Okay, that community insight loop sounds powerful. And I guess that leads into the next step.
It does, perfectly. Step 4 is survey audience needs in response to shocks and pivot messaging.
Pivot messaging. So realizing what you plan to talk about might be totally wrong now.
Precisely. Your assumptions about audience priorities can just evaporate overnight when a major shock hits. You absolutely cannot guess what they need or how they feel. You have to ask. Otherwise, you risk sounding completely tone deaf.
So more surveys, polls, maybe ask me anything sessions.
Right. Quick, targeted feedback mechanisms right after an event. Then you analyze those responses, maybe segment them to different customer types have different concerns, different regions, people with different risk levels.
And use that data to
rapidly update your content plan, your editorial calendar. Maybe you need to pause that big marketing campaign you had scheduled because it just feels wrong now. You shelve the irrelevant stuff and focus on what people actually need now.
The source mentioned an ALAND example here, right? During early COVID.
Yeah, a classic case. They had growth-focused content lined up, but they did quick pulse checks with subscribers, and the feedback was overwhelming. People needed help with risk mitigation, with just managing the uncertainty, thinking about well-being.
So they switched gears completely.
Almost instantly, based entirely on that daily feedback loop. That's real agility. Shifting your message based on what your audience tells you they need right now.
Okay, that's crucial. And the final step in this plan.
Step 5, and this is about continuous improvement. Debrief after each event to improve rapid content workflow.
Learning from the experience.
Exactly. Every crisis, every shock you navigate using this system, it's basically a live training exercise. You have to systematically extract the lessons. Otherwise, you're just surviving, not getting better.
How do you structure that debrief?
Get that cross-functional crisis team back together. Have a really honest conversation. What worked well? Where did we drop the ball? What surprised us? Dig into the metrics, too. Did people open the emails? Did they engage with the updates? What was the sentiment in the replies or comments?
Critical.
Brutally honest, yeah. And then, crucially, feed those learnings back into the system. Update the crisis content protocol, refine those templates, maybe tweak the approval process, make that living playbook actually live and evolve.
And the payoff is getting better each time.
Definitely. The article mentioned Aylin used their debriefs to cut response times in half over time. And they also got much better at hitting the right tone, balancing clarity with empathy. That comes from learning.
So these 5 steps, protocol, weekly updates, community insights, pivoting based on feedback, and debriefing, that's the core action plan. But the source suggests this isn't just about crisis management.
Not at all. That's the bigger picture. Building this agile content capability isn't just your fire extinguisher. It's a strategic asset all the time in a world that's just generally volatile now.
How so? What are those broader benefits?
Well, think about trust and loyalty. We touched on this. If you're the brand that communicates transparently, helpfully, consistently during tough times, you become indispensable. People remember that long after the immediate crisis fades.
They stick with you.
They do. And then there's the competitive angle. Agility lets you move faster. Smaller, nimbler players can absolutely use smart, fast communication to gain ground on larger, perhaps more bureaucratic competitors during periods of change. You can win mind share, maybe even market share.
So it levels the playing field a bit.
It really can. And finally, there's innovation. All those real-time insights you're gathering from your community, all that feedback. It's not just for comms.
Ah, right. It feeds back into the business itself.
Exactly. It's incredibly valuable data. It can spark ideas for quick product tweaks, new features, maybe even reveal completely unexpected opportunities that you'd never spot in, normal times.
Okay, so let's bring this all together for everyone listening. The main message from our deep dive into Dr. Ghamari's work seems pretty clear.
Yeah, it's that volatility disruption. This isn't some temporary blip we're waiting to pass. This is the new normal. This is the operating environment now.
And in this environment, how well you communicate, how quickly, how relevantly, with empathy, backed by data that's not just nice to have, it's becoming fundamental to your organization's future.
Absolutely. Your survival and maybe even your ability to thrive.
So building these agile content systems, it's not just about having a crisis plan tucked away. It's about building a permanent capability,
Right.
a kind of cultural readiness.
A permanent muscle, yeah. A culture of being ready, staying relevant, staying connected to your audience, whatever happens next.
And the payoff isn't just survival. The blueprint suggests it's actually about positioning yourself to lead through the uncertainty.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Not just weathering the storm, but emerging stronger, maybe even guiding others through it.
So reflecting on all this, the protocol, the updates, the listening, the pivoting, the learning, the final thought for you listening is, what does building your organization's content agility muscle look like starting today?